Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome officially. So this is the Capital Story live main event that we do every couple months, and so excited that you're here. I am thrilled to be hosting this virtual storytelling event tonight. We have such a great show for you here today. So we have five storytellers who will be taking our virtual stage, and they're going to be sharing true personal stories about love. I mean, it is February, but we didn't want to do just the love that we always think of. So a different kind of love is the theme. So these are going to be stories that are an exploration of non-romantic love and how it shapes us. So really excited. The stories that you're about to hear are just wonderful. Really excited. Want to start off by saying thank you to our sponsors. So thank you to Capital Public Radio. We love working with them and are deeply appreciative of their continued support. I want to say thank you to all of you who have already donated to support this event tonight. And that who have been supporting Capital Storytelling throughout the various events. So just really excited that you're here. I'm really excited for the show. It's going to be so good. Really going to enjoy it. So I am Betsaida LeBron. I am the director of outreach and a story coach with Cap Story, as well as your MC this evening. So without further ado, I really want to get into our storytellers tonight. You'll see more of me throughout the evening. And remember, save the chat until you see me again. But for now, we'll just sit back, enjoy, listen. Our first storyteller this evening is Penny. And Penny is a PhD candidate with many years of experience in higher education. This is her first, but she hopes, and we hope so too, not her last storytelling experience. So Penny is sharing a story with us entitled Sing a Song.
Good evening, everyone. So it's really unusual for me to be going first in this because I'm a really kind of skittish, nervous performer. Even when I took the storytelling class, I waited until the last day to tell my story. And was the last person to tell the story on that day. Part of the kind of skittishness I have is rooted in my performance history, which hasn't been very good. And it really kind of came to a head several years ago when I was directing a program for, it was a program in the summer for community college students. And they came to me and asked me to be in their talent show. And, I thought, well, I could maybe do some salsa dancing because I felt kind of good at that, or maybe I could read poetry. But what I really wanted to do was to sing. Singing was a dream that I had had for a really long time, but the dream didn't have me. It started when I was around 6 years old and I saw the Sonny and Cher show. And I kind of fell in love with Cher. I thought she was so beautiful and she was funny and she wore like glamorous gowns. But what really got me was that she would, at one point in the show, she'd sit on this tall, upright piano and sing V-A-M-P, vamp. And I really wanted to do that. And so I would grab a towel and put it on my head for long hair. And I had a blue, shiny polyester bathrobe that I wore. That was my shiny gown. And I grabbed a hairbrush for a microphone, and I would drape myself on my parents' dresser and pretend to be Cher singing on a piano. And it was that dream that I was kind of still in my head when I decided to try out for my junior high chorus. And the chorus was led by Miss Patterson, who was, she had like this beautiful, round, gigantic afro, and she wore velvet blazers and platform shoes, and it just kind of oozed cool. And I found a song, I practiced, and on the day I got in line with the other kids, and I could hear kind of immediately that songs. Instead, Miss Patterson was that they would play like a middle C and a high C, and then she would go through vocal exercises, vocal scales with the students. And so my you know, I'm as the line is progressing, I could feel my throat kind of closing up and my mouth getting dry, and my heart was really beating. And when I finally got to her, and she played the C, I made the first C, but on the second higher C, my voice cracked. And so the audition was over. You know, even to my ears, I knew it was bad. And so the dream kind of died, or if it didn't die, it was very like buried deep inside me. And so several decades later, I was on a cruise with my adult daughter, and she signed up for karaoke, and she convinced me that it would be fun. And so I found a song, Harper Valley PTA, which I thought, you know, not so hard to sing. And, you know, it was pretty short. And so, you know, I practiced the song. And when the night came for karaoke, the music started to play, and I knew something was wrong. And it turned out that the karaoke track was in a higher pitch. And so I was really nervous and had a right to be, because every time I hit a certain line, my voice cracked. And so after the performance, my daughter, to kind of cheer me up, said that she had seen much worse. So it was those kinds of very public failures that were on my mind when I was thinking about this talent show. And I called my daughter up and asked her advice, and she said, well, you know, if you do it, just make sure, one, you commit to the performance, two, have fun, and three, if you get really nervous, kind of invite the audience in. And so I found a song from the musical Ain't Misbehavin' called Your Feet's Too Big. And that's by Fats Waller. It's a 1930s song. It's about a person on a date. And, you know, the person finds the date attractive, but the feet are so big that it's a deal breaker. And so I thought, okay, you know, here's a song that's pretty easy to sing. It's kind of spoken, sung, at least in the beginning. And it's short and it's funny. What could go wrong? So I found a karaoke track that's in my pitch, and I practiced. And I actually felt really good about it. But as I was walking to the classroom where the talent show was going to be, I had this thought run through my mind that I am nowhere near as cool as Miss Patterson. And, you know, if I perform really badly, like I'm the one that's supposed to be inspiring these students, what if I lose their respect? And so you know, as I'm walking to the classroom, I'm making the executive decision to take myself out when my the director, who's my lead counselor, comes over to me and says, someone missed their time slot, you're on. So, in a time-wasting move, I decide to um, pull out a desk and put it in the front of the classroom, and pull over some chairs and set them up as I'm, my seat and my dinner mate's seat and a table, just like the stage show. And this classroom was set up like an auditorium. So it was rows that went up, and I could see everybody. So when I finally sat down, it was a hot day and I had a straw hat on. I kind of pulled the brim down, one to kind of, be a buffer against me and the audience, but also to kind of collect myself and stop my heart from beating so fast. And the director puts on the karaoke track, and the music is too low. And I can barely hear it. The audience can't hear it at all. And I think, yes, like I don't have to do this. I'm free. It's done. But then he figures out what's wrong, and the music starts playing. And it's a very, very short intro. So I'm on. And I start up in Harlem at a table for two. But there were the four of us, baby, me, your big feet, and you. And I can hear some chuckles. And so I go on. From your ankles up, I'll say you sure are sweet. But from that down, baby, you just too much feet. Oh, your feet's too big. Don't want you 'cause your feet's too big. Mad at you 'cause your feet's too big. I really hate you because your feet's too big, yes. And so I can see the audience, they're smiling and they're clapping, and they're laughing in the right places. And so I calm down and I really start to perform the song. And even though I'm not as nervous anymore, I actually, invite the audience to start singing with me on the "Your Feet's Too Big" refrain. And by the end, there was applause, and the dream had finally found me. And that's kind of the point, that you keep showing up. You show up even if you're anxious. You show up even if you're scared. You show up even if you're not that great, but you keep showing up for your dreams, and they'll show up for you. And they'll lead you to many different places, including right here with you tonight. Thank you.
Hey. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Penny, for starting off the night. Yes, this is how I'm excited. We're going to just keep it going because like I said, we have 5 incredible storytellers lined up for you. Just so good. Yeah, I'm going to give you a second because you see my face. Just, yes, all the love in the comments. This is your moment. Thank you, Penny. Please go back and read this chat. It is so much love. Just yay, wonderful, incredible. Absolutely. Just super wonderful, inspiring. Yeah, so good. Our next storyteller, I'm gonna bring her right up. So our next storyteller this evening is Tammy Spence. So Tammy Spence loves airport shopping and can be described as a little bit Yankee, a little bit y'all, and she even has a t-shirt to prove it. She's a Jersey girl who spent most of the past 18 years in the Carolinas, where she currently resides. Tammy is a neuroscientist by training, and when she is not performing experiments or supporting other scientists in her day job, she can be found florist, bathing in local state parks, dancing like no one is watching, even when they are, or getting some puppy love from neighborhood pooches. So Tammy is sharing with us tonight a story, and the title is It's a Sign.
Thank you so much. When I was 5 years old, I was hit by a car, had a pretty significant brain bleed, fell into a coma, and woke up a week later in a hospital, and vowed to become a medical doctor. That's right. I had my whole life planned out. Now, at that time, I knew only that medical doctors helped hurt or sick people feel better and that they had to do well in school. So I applied myself to my studies and got straight A's through elementary, middle, and high school. And when it came time to select a college, I found the perfect school with a great pre-med program that was conveniently located very far away from home. And I moved from the middle of nowhere, New Jersey, to beautiful Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. And I began taking those pre-med prerequisites. I studied super hard and was ultimately inducted into the National Pre-Medical Honor Society, which was a really big accomplishment. Life was good, and I was on that path to becoming a medical doctor, just like I had planned when I was 5 years old. Then it came time to select a major, and I had heard whispers that Furman was thinking about launching a neuroscience program. What's neuroscience? Well, it's the study of the nervous system. And call me biased, but it took the best parts of chemistry, biology, physics, psychology, philosophy, and even computer science, and combined them into a single major. In other words, it was the highlights of the pre-med track plus some extra cool bonus material. And, given that traumatic brain injury that I had experienced as a child, I was particularly interested in neuroscience. So I decided to sign up for the major. The first non-pre-med related neuroscience class that I took was with this tall brunette woman whose hair had just the right amount of blonde highlights. She had these piercing blue eyes, and she always wore Birkenstock sandals to class. Let's call her Judy Griselle, Dr. Griselle. I loved Dr. Griselle's teaching style, and the material she presented, it hooked me. She talked a lot about how drugs affect behavior and mental processes, and I was obsessed. The more I learned, the more I wanted to know. So I flipped through the course catalog to see when she'd be teaching again, and saw that the next class she was offering was the following spring semester. But the catch was, I didn't have the prerequisite for the course. But being the determined woman that I am, I approached Dr. Griselle and I asked her, hey, is there any way that I could bypass that prerequisite thing and get into your class? She responded by handing me a stack of books. She said, yeah, have a look through these and let me know what you think. Well, I immediately started reading those books. I remember flying home to Jersey for Christmas break on this tiny commuter jet. We were flying through this snowstorm and it was just painfully bumpy, but that didn't stop me. I had this giant textbook open on the tray table in front of me and I was engrossed in it. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to try to remember the material. It just stuck. And I thought, this must be the universe's way of telling me that I'm about to embark on a new path. It felt a little crazy to just pivot like that and abandon the only real plan that I'd ever known, but I had to follow my heart. I returned to Furman after the break and met with Dr. Griselle. I told her what I had learned, and she immediately waved me into the class. And before you knew it, I was that person at a frat party where everyone's drinking beer, and I'm like, hey, you want to know what that beer is doing in your brain right now? Let's talk first pass metabolism. Anyone? Okay. Maybe acetaldehyde dehydrogenase? No. People would literally run from me. I was the least cool person at the party, but I was right where I needed to be. And like most people who are totally helplessly in love, I just couldn't shut up about the brain. One day, Dr. Griselle was handing back some exams. She called my name and I went to the front of the room to get my test. I'd scored 100 or maybe really 105 with the extra credit material. And on top of my test, there was an application for graduate school. I looked at Dr. Griselle and she said, you're excused from this class. Go on. Consider this application. You are ready for it. Okay, wow, maybe? I gave it some thought and realized that she was right. I was ready for this, and this is what I wanted to do. So I called my parents to tell them that after having completed all of my pre-med prerequisites, I would not be going to medical school. You could hear them gasp. I said I'd go to graduate school instead. But because it was my senior year and all of the grad school applications had already been submitted, I needed some time to figure things out. So I told them that I'd be moving home after graduation. That's every parent's worst nightmare, right? Like, they had just paid the majority of a very expensive private liberal arts education. And now here I am, moving home indefinitely. But that's what happened. Back in the middle of nowhere, New Jersey, which does have a name, Green Township, I set 3 goals for myself. Get into graduate school, save money so that I could start paying off that remainder of my student loan, and get healthy. And I immediately got to work, literally. I got a job at Marshall's, it's that discount department store that was strategically located next to a gym, which I also joined, and spent hours on the elliptical and recumbent bicycle, reading about the neurobiology of addiction and preparing for my graduate record exam, which I needed in order to finalize my grad school application. My plan worked. I was checking off those goals. I got healthy, started making payments on the student loan, cast a wide net for grad school applications, and ultimately received 8 invitations for interviews. I was stoked. And when it came time to prepare for the interview process, I contacted Dr. Grizel and asked her if she had any advice for me. What should I expect? Like, what do they want to see? And she told me, they want to see you. Just be you. You are great. You are going to be a shoo-in. Shoo-in? Wow, she used those words. That definitely gave me a boost of confidence. My first interview was scheduled for a school in the Pacific Northwest. Let's say Oregon. It was where Dr. Grizel had earned her PhD. Talk about a good sign. I felt excited and ready. I wanted this. Just be you. Dr. Grizel's words rang in my ears. So I show up for the interview. Bright red lips, giant hoop earrings, and a cute cabbie hat. That was my style back then, and it still kind of is. My first appointment was with a new hire, a woman who was recruiting students for her lab. She asked me why I wanted to meet with her. And I said, well, you do some really cool research. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart. Cool? She questioned me with absolute disgust. Do you want to elaborate on that? Oh my God. What did I just say? I started panicking. I racked my brain and stuttered, well, I reviewed your research profile, and I thought your work looking at changes in white matter integrity in the hippocampus of adolescent marijuana users was... She stopped me. Wrong brain region. It was the hypothalamus, not the hippocampus, or vice versa. I don't know, because she ended the interview at that point. She told me, I'm going to be honest with you. You are not a good fit for this program. Wow. To hear those words, I was devastated, totally destroyed. I didn't have too much time to process this because I was whisked away to my next appointment with 4 or 5 faculty members. I took my seat around a small round table, and they asked me about my job at Marshall's. I was floored. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, they knew that I worked at Marshall's when they invited me to interview at their school and flew me across the continental USA. Why didn't they ask me about my research background or my motivation for applying to graduate school? I don't know. But I was full of misdirected anger, and I unloaded on them. Basically gave them the finger. I walked out the door into the hallway and burst into tears. I realized that I had just bombed that interview, and in the most major way. And I was dreading having to have that talk with Dr. Grizel. On the flight back home to Jersey, I was overcome by self-doubt. I felt totally defeated. Maybe graduate school wasn't for me after all. I had no idea how I was going to make it through 7 more of these interviews. And honestly, I wanted to quit the process. My second interview was scheduled for Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I was really on the fence about going. In the end, the stubborn Aries in me took over, and I decided to see things through. But because Just Be You didn't work at Oregon, I thought, be what you think they want. So I bought my first pantsuit on sale at Marshall's, thank you, and flew down to the PTI airport in Greensboro, North Carolina. On the day of the interview, I wore no makeup and my glasses. I remember they took pictures of all of the applicants, and I was so uncomfortable, probably frowning in that picture. But I made it through a roundtable discussion with some faculty members, which was a good sign considering what happened the last time I was faced with a group of scientists around a table. Then I had a lab tour. The tour was scheduled with this super successful woman. Her work was continuously funded by NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And her work was regularly published in high-impact journals. I picked her to meet with because my research interests aligned with hers. And as I approached her lab, my heart began to race. I feared a repeat of what happened at Oregon, and I could feel a lump forming in my throat. And when I knocked on the door to her lab, she greeted me with a huge smile. She flung the door open and proudly proclaimed, "Welcome to my lab! I think we do some pretty cool things here." Cool? I couldn't believe my ears. I relaxed and said, I think it's pretty cool too. And in that moment, I felt that I belonged at Wake Forest University. And I was 100% confident that I would be accepted into the program. The rest of the interview day and night affirmed those feelings. It was truly a fantastic experience. And so sure was I that in the airport on the way home, I decided to buy a Wake Forest t-shirt. It was a pink and brown shirt. Granted, Wake's colors are black and gold, but I remember holding up the shirt and saying, "This is the shirt. This is my shirt." I loved it. So I bought it. The clerk handed me a bag. I stuffed it in my backpack and boarded the flight back home to Jersey. I promised myself that I would wear the shirt once I got the acceptance phone call from Wake Forest. It was several long weeks before that phone call came in, but it did. And I ran up the stairs to my room, found the bag with the shirt, and ripped it open, and I was shocked. I screamed. That shirt that I had handpicked in the airport did not say Wake Forest University. It said NC State. How did that even happen? Having heard the scream, my dad came rushing into my room. He asked me what was wrong. "Dad, this shirt that I bought in the airport says NC State, not Wake Forest. It's a sign. It's a sign that I'm not supposed to go to Wake or maybe even grad school at all." My dad looked relieved. He smiled and said, "Yeah, it's a sign. It's a sign that you need to pay more attention when you're picking out your clothing." And I thought, he is absolutely right. The only sign that I need to pay attention to is how good I felt when I was at Wake Forest. And as for the NC State shirt, I gave it to my younger sister. She still has it. I did end up going to Wake Forest University. It took me 7 years to complete my PhD. It was a hell of a journey, filled with stories for another day. I eventually did get an official Wake Forest t-shirt and a coffee mug, blanket, and large outdoor decorative flag. And I still love the brain, perhaps now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So great. I know. I hope you're feeling the love, audience. I definitely am. Such great stories. The last two storytellers, our first two storytellers, are former students of Cap Story, alums who have taken storytelling courses with us, and so just wanted to highlight that. They're just not that we're taking credit for their stories. They're amazing people, but just but they're like really part of the family. Just wanted you to know that. And speaking of classes, we do have storytelling classes. We have podcast classes to teach you how to do podcasting and to know how to do that. So we have a 101 class, a 201 class, and intro to podcasting. These classes are starting very soon in the next couple weeks, but everything is at capitalstorytelling.com. So please check that out and register now for those classes. We want you to know that there are scholarships available. It is really important to us that everything that we do be accessible to everyone. So we do have pay what you can scholarships. And so to make that happen, to make the scholarships happen, to make shows like tonight's event happen, right, we need sponsorships, and so that's why we're so thankful for those of you who have already donated. And if you haven't donated, you're enjoying what you're seeing tonight, please consider making a donation. capitalstorytelling.com/donate. All the information is on our website. If you've already made a donation and now that you're kind of enjoying the night, you're like, I'm enjoying this more than the amount I donated, you can upgrade your donation now. So that is always an option. So we just really appreciate those who have already donated, those who continue to support Cap Story and our mission, and a special shout out to Capital Public Radio for being our event sponsor tonight. We do have live captioning, which is happening. You can do the closed caption. That live captioning is happening, and that costs. All of these events that we put on, we are really thoughtful about how we do that so that everything is accessible, and that is really our commitment to diversity and inclusivity, and we want to ensure that all of the city's stories are heard, and not just in Sacramento now that we're even bigger than that virtually, right? So the link, thank you, Lisa, who's Capital Storytelling, just dropped the link in the chat, so that will take you straight to the donation. If you can, and we understand that you might not be able to donate, and we're just glad that you're here. But for those of you who are able to donate and you believe in what we're doing and you see the impact that it has, right, our mission, and you believe in this, please consider making a donation. You can make a one-time donation or a monthly recurring donation. These are options, and we just are so thankful for all of you who are already part of the Cap Story family and who support us monetarily. We really do. We cannot thank you enough. So thank you. Well, and capitalstorytelling.com, right? That's where you can donate, and also where you can find out information about classes. There are the tabs under classes. There are all the classes that are coming up. So and some of them are coming up within like 2 weeks. So check it out. Think about registering if you're having a good time. We also have events besides these live events. We also do monthly story slams. And so those are the first Saturday of every month. And that is kind of an open mic for storytelling. Some of you I know who are in the audience have been going to the slams. So let us know what you think of the slams and if people should be coming to join us. That is something that you can come and either share and sign up to be a storyteller. And it's an open mic, so anyone can come and just kind of practice their storytelling skills. But you can also just show up as an audience member and hear other stories. And so if these live events only happen every couple months, if that's not enough to scratch that story itch, right? That storytelling itch that I know like we all have, please come to the monthly slams. I host those, so you already know you have a familiar face, right? Just come, say hello, be part of the audience, or tell a story, right? These are options for you, and those are always open to you. You can register on the Capital Storytelling website. So our next storyteller, going to keep us moving. We're having such a great time. I'm having a wonderful time. Are you guys having a good time? Yeah. I know you are. I know I'm going to give you a second to like type it in the chat. Thank you. But I feel it. I feel the energy in this virtual room. Like literally I'm in my kitchen. But like, man, it's such a great energy. I'm just, there's so much love in the space, and so thankful that you're letting us like into your in your home, that you're spending the evening with us. Just we're having the best time. So I just want to keep it going. And our next storyteller this evening is Rizvan. Really excited for this story and tell you a little bit about him. Rizvan was born in the USSR right before it collapsed and ended up in a tiny country of Azerbaijan. He then moved to the USA in his early teens. He spent his formative years here, and after traveling the world, realized that this is his true home. He's a self-proclaimed huge dork who absolutely loves learning more about people and the world, and he says that storytelling has been an opportunity to learn more about himself. And Rizvan will be sharing a story with us entitled Imposter Syndrome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to say something that is going to be very, very cliche. I wanted to be a doctor for as long as I could remember because I wanted to help people. And once I got through medical school, something really strange happened. People started asking me for medical advice. And it was and it still is horrifying. There are moments when somebody asks about something as simple as neck pain, and my first urge is to run to the computer, check my phone real quick to make sure that I'm giving them the right information about like simple neck pain. And I think everyone knows how to treat like a kink in their neck. One would need to be a doctor, and yet here I am, terrified of giving the wrong answer. And I think the reason for these moments of self-doubt is I feel that I'm not as competent, or I'm not as good as my colleagues, or as others perceive me. And the name for that is the imposter syndrome, and I very much feel like I suffer from it. And during these moments, I like to think back to a simpler time, about, let's say, 20 years ago when I was in sixth grade. And um, I still remember how excited I was that my dad came back from Moscow, and he was an absolute sweetheart. He brought me like this set of encyclopedias, because as all normal sixth graders, that's all I wanted as a souvenir, a set of brand new shiny encyclopedias. And I was so excited to read them, that I was going to take them to school with me. And my mom, the reasonable one in the family, told me that I shouldn't do that because I might get in trouble with my teachers at school because I'm not paying attention, or I might get my new encyclopedias damaged. But obviously, as somebody in sixth grade, I thought I knew better. So I sneakily put in a few encyclopedias into my backpack, went to school, and made a beeline for the last row in the classroom because I was being smart. The farther I am away from the teachers, the less likely they're to notice me. Well, despite the fact that we all know that the teachers are the ones paying attention the most to the last row because that's where all the trouble is. Well, in this case, the trouble was me reading children's encyclopedias. That's right. I was a very big troublemaker. But anyway, so I get through my first period, everything is fine. In my second period, and it's all going great. I'm not paying any attention to my classes or my teachers, and I haven't been caught. My plan is working perfectly. And I get lulled into this false sense of security. Unfortunately for me, my third period was math, and this teacher knew me very well. Very well. Uh, the teacher in my math class, she was my mom. She and she knew that I brought the encyclopedias, and she could see that I was reading them as sneaky as I was. She had years of experience as a teacher, and she could see through any student, no matter what, not even having to look at them. And she hatched a little plan. The plan was to, to give me just enough rope to hang myself, essentially. She would explain her lesson, explain how to solve this equation that we've never seen before, and then she would call me to the blackboard, have me try to solve it. And obviously, I would not know how to solve it because I wasn't paying attention. At which point, she could yell, she could humiliate me for not being able to solve an equation, and she could chastise me for not paying attention all at the same time. Now, I'm not aware of this happening. I'm reading about the circulation of water in nature, how rain happens, how wind happens. Nothing to do with math, obviously. And I hear my name. You know how it is. Like, even if you're not paying attention, you can still hear your name, and that breaks you out of your reverie. And, you know, I hear my mom calling me to the front of the class. So I go to the front of the class, not suspecting anything amiss. Uh, she hands me a piece of chalk and tells me to solve the equation. I look at her. She has a perfect poker face. I see nothing amiss. I look at the equation. I look at the piece of chalk, shrug my shoulders, and start solving the equation. And then I feel the atmosphere in the class change. There's a slight amount of confusion behind me, and I look behind me, and I'm trying to figure out what's happening. I ask my friends, my classmates, what's happening? Did I get the wrong answer? And I know we got the same answer as you did, but and that's when I can feel the anger on my left, which is where my mom, my teacher, is located, and I can see that no longer there's a poker face, but she is pissed, and she starts. She asks me, what did you do? I'm like, I solved the equation. Like, no, what's going on? Like, I solved it correctly from what it seems. Or if I solved it wrong, everyone else solved it wrong. So you can't be mad at me. It's like, and then she starts asking me, why did you solve it this way? That's right. She basically turned every single word into a sentence. And that's what she does when she's mad. And I'm like, and I'm like, and I was confused because I'm like, isn't that how you solve it? And that's when I realized that that's not how she explained it to class. I just made it obvious that I wasn't paying attention during the entire last hour. And yet at the same time, I have completely ruined her plan to fail solve the equation. And she's angry. And I'm, as all good troublemakers, start slowly backing away behind the front row, like students who are all straight A students, perfect behavior. And at this point, like their sense of right and wrong does not allow them for this to continue. Like from their perspective, I solved the equation correctly, so there's nothing I should be punished for. My mom sees that she's losing control of the classroom, so she tells me, "Go back to your seat and and you better hope that I don't catch you like not paying attention." Obviously, I go back to my seat, and obviously, I continue reading my encyclopedias and not paying attention, because obviously, I was able to get away with it. Except three periods later, as the last bell was about to ring, I remembered something. I made not just any teacher angry, I made my mom angry. And we live together. In fact, we have to walk back home together because our classes ended at the same time. And so I think to myself, okay, I need to be careful here. Again, I made my mom angry, not my dad. Now my dad, he's angry for 15 minutes and then he apologizes for me misbehaving. No, I made my mom angry. She could stop talking to me for 3 or 4 days. She could tell me not to even get near her. As I was walking down the stairs, I had to think of a multi-step approach to deal with this problem. Step 1, assess how angry she is. Step 2, figure out the perfect time to apologize. Not too early, because then while she's still angry, but not to wait too long, because that's when the anger really sets in. So you have to find that sweet spot. Step 3, once you're in the sweet spot, find a way to be extra adorable, such as by bringing a treat or by pretending that you are a big dinosaur or a cat or something, just so she laughs, because if she laughs, you got her, you can apologize, and boom, you win. So I go downstairs. I go to see my mom. I approach her carefully, but like as being the most perfect angel. Like I was trying to walk like a perfect person. And as I get closer to her, she offers me her hand. I think to myself, very good. She is okay with me holding her hand. So I grab her hand, like we're already halfway there. She cannot be that angry at me if she's letting me just hold her hand. Then she asks, and I think to myself, oh my goodness, a second victory. She is talking to me. She is asking me questions. She asks, how did you know to solve this equation this way? And at this point, in my excitement, I remember like why I solved it that way. And I told her, remember 2 days ago when my classes were over a little bit early, but you still had to teach a class, and I stayed in the back, and you were explaining how to solve to 8th graders how to solve this equation. And yeah, I stopped paying attention about after 5 minutes, but that was the explanation that was enough. And that's when she got thoughtful and nodded, and we walked back home, hand in hand. And then the rest of the day went by normally. I never had to apologize. She spoke to me as if everything was normal, and this day kind of faded out of my memory. For the next, I would say, 15 years, when I came back home absolutely terrified and absolutely convinced that I have just failed my medical licensing exam. I forgot how aspirin works. I couldn't remember what aspirin did. The simplest question. And I tell her, like, I think I failed. This exam was really hard. I don't think I done well at it. Like I think I screwed up. And she looked at me and she told me, no, you have not. That's impossible. They have not invented an exam that you cannot pass, that you've prepared for. Remember that time when you were able to solve the equations at 8th grader level while barely paying attention? Why do you think I had you skip 7th grade? I'm like, is that why you had me skip 7th grade? You never explained that to me. He's like, well, that was not important. You just had to do what you were told. That's right. Like, my mom is not very much for sugarcoating thing. Like, I think the only reason I got that pep talk after the exam was because, she melded a little bit with her age. But the fact that somebody like her, somebody who speaks nothing but truth to me, that doesn't sugarcoat anything, have this complete confidence in me, has made me realize that I do deserve to be where I am, and I am absolutely as competent as others perceive me. Thank you so much for listening.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Rizvan. I love it. There's a lot of brains, thinking about the love of brain science and just medicine and all kinds of just I don't know, the connections there delight me. Um, yeah, we got some very smart people telling stories tonight. I really love it, everybody. Talking about things I don't even understand. All right, well, we're just gonna keep going. Our next storyteller this evening is Jane Gorsi, and Jane grew up in rural small towns in Indiana and Northern California, and she spent 44 years in the Bay Area, but she credits her Irish roots with her love of storytelling. A legal secretary by trade and profession, she is now retired and has relocated to Sacramento, where she lives close to her family, enjoys the beautiful seasons, and is still amazed to find parking everywhere she goes. And Jane is sharing with us this evening a story entitled Believy House.
I am in love with a house that I haven't seen in almost 20 years, that I haven't lived in since I was a child. It has a name. It is called Believy House, and it lives in Northern Ireland, almost half a world away. My mother was born and raised in Northern Ireland. My father was an American soldier from rural Indiana, stationed there during World War II. They met, fell in love, and were married, all in a few short months. There was a war going on, my mother used to say. You couldn't afford to waste time. After the war was over, mother came back to rural Indiana with my father and promptly fell into a mammoth disillusionment with the United States. After quite some time, she convinced her brother to pay for a long visit back home. And when I was 7 and my sister Hazel was 4.5, our family went back to Northern Ireland for the better part of a year. We lived there with my mother's sister and her husband, my Aunt Gladys and Uncle Billy, in a huge old Georgian house built in the 1760s. Lest you think this was a mansion, it was not. 4 stories, 3-foot thick walls, 8 fireplaces, yes. But my aunt and uncle had bought the house, plus 50 acres of good land, for almost nothing in 1939. And the reason for this was that the house had no 20th century amenities. There was no electricity, no telephone, no hot water, and no bathing facilities, just a small half bathroom on the main floor. In the late 18th century, the king had declared a window tax on his British subjects, and as a consequence, all the windows in the 3rd and 4th stories of the house were bricked up. And by 1939, not one single brick had been removed. This meant that the upper half of the house, which included all the bedrooms, had no natural light. And you couldn't just plug in a lamp because there was no electricity. There was an enormous kitchen in the basement, although all the eating facilities were on the 1st floor, so there was this flight of stone steps in between those. It had huge meat hooks hanging from the ceiling and a fireplace so big my father could stand up inside it. There were farm outbuildings, woods, pasture, an old derelict linen mill decomposing down by the river, and up the hill was a fairy ring, which we were cautioned never to go into. I did, in private, ask my Aunt Gladys what would happen if I stepped into the fairy ring. And she said, "Oh, no, child, you can't do that. Fairies would take you away and we'd never be able to find you." And let me tell you what, I never stepped into that fairy ring. Not ever. Now, in Indiana, we had a small wood frame house at the edge of a town of about 1,000 people. It had 2 bedrooms, and a garden and a yard and a fence and some neighbors. The streets were not paved, but they did run at right angles to each other. Children walked to school and they walked to the dime store and the ice cream stand. There was lots and lots of really luscious, beautiful vegetation, but it was organized and disciplined, much like the fields of corn that were outside of the town that provided everybody with a livelihood. Living in Indiana, I had decided that as far as life goes, it's the humans that are in charge. And this was what I thought life was about. But at Believe in Northern Ireland, everything was completely different. Indiana, the one thing that got out of control regarding nature was the weather. In the summer, we had massive thunderstorms and the occasional tornado. But these were short-lived events. Here, gone. In Northern Ireland, the one steady factor was the weather. It was raining, or it was misting, or there was sunshine. There were no tornadoes, there were no thunderstorms. But everything else had a personality, a soul, a way of being all to itself. In the woods and the fields and even the gardens, there were rustling spirits. And although you couldn't see them, you knew they were there. I never saw a fairy, but I knew that they were there too. In time, I began to realize that here at Believe, the humans were not in charge. So if they weren't in charge, who was? And I decided that it was the house. Now, the first reason was that the house was bigger than everything else around. The other reason was that it was very old, older than anything I knew about. As an American school child, I had learned that there was really nothing of consequence that had ever happened in the world before 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was signed. But when we were in Northern Ireland, my mother pointed out that Believe was built in the 1760s, before the United States was even begun. That was a blasphemy. But I realized, okay, this house is really old and really big, and clearly it's in charge. And this really helped with me because in Indiana, I felt that as long as you knew the rules, you would be safe, since it was the humans that were in charge. Now, I was only 7 and I didn't know the rules, but I figured that someday, eventually, before I was a grown-up, somebody would tell me about the rules. But I did worry about this. In Northern Ireland, when I realized that Believe was in charge, I didn't have to worry about the rules anymore. I could relax, because if anything happened, the house was going to run the show. Gradually, I learned to loosen my grip of control on my surroundings. I began to relax. I trusted the house. I talked to it endlessly. And because I was a child, I believed firmly that the house talked back. Over time, I fell completely and totally in love with Believe. In the fall, I'd begun to go to school in the nearby village. In Indiana, I didn't like going to school because I was frightened of the other children. I was a bit of a victim, and bullies can spot that a mile away. My mother did not hold with American fashion, and so she dressed me the way you would dress a child in Northern Ireland before the war, any war, pick a war. My clothes were really not anything to do with American fashion. Plus, this was the automobile-crazed 50s in the United States, and we were one of the very few people in the town that did not have a car. The bullies taunted me about this on the playground. What? How come you guys don't have a car? Are you poor? Why do you wear those weird clothes? Are you crazy? I, of course, dealt with this by crying and trying to run away, which means that the bullies just track you down and make your life more miserable. I didn't like school. But in Northern Ireland, the children thought I was a good idea. Here I was from America. They asked me all kinds of questions about it and were fascinated by this. Does everybody over there chew gum? That was a big question. The other thing was that they all knew that I lived in that great big house because my Uncle Billy, who owned the house, was a teacher at the school. And I realized that even children will have more respect for you if they think that you have a great big house behind you being a protector. I relaxed, I made friends, and I began to enjoy school. And life was good until in mid-December, Mother said that we would be going back to Indiana as Daddy was waiting for us there in our little house. I was thunderstruck. How could I possibly go back to school there? There was no way I couldn't possibly go back to school there. I had the same dreadful clothes. We did not have a car. And there were those kids, and they were now second graders. And it was the middle of the school year, and all the alliances were already be formed. And there I would be alone and friendless, and they would bully me, and I would cry. My life was over. What would I do? So instead of going outside to play, I climbed the endless steps to the top floor of the house and sat in an old rocking chair in an unused fourth floor room. It was one of my favorite places because I could sit in the chair and look out the newly unbricked windows, under which was old 18th century glass with whorls and bubbles and imperfections in it. And if I moved my head back and forth, I could look out the window and make the landscape and the trees dance in that old weird glass. Who doesn't like to do that? But on this particular day, I was crying so hard that I couldn't see anything at all. And I cried until finally there were no tears left in me, and I just sat in the chair. And in the silence, I could feel the house put its arms around me. And I heard Believy say, "Who cares whether or not you have a car? You have me. Those kids where you come from have never seen anything remotely related to me. I am bigger than all of them put together. I am bigger than your whole school and older than your town. And I will always be here. You will always have me." Who's to say that a 7-year-old with an open heart and an active imagination can't solve her own problems as long as she's got a great big house standing behind her protecting her? I ask you. So in January, when we went back to Indiana, the school and the children were the same. But I was different. When the kids ragged on me about my weird clothes and not having a car, I turned away from them and thought about Believy, standing there behind me, protecting me. And eventually they left me alone. And that summer, our family moved to a new little town in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Northern California. I brought the blessings and protection of Believy with me, but the kids at the new school were so nice and so helpful that I never even once had to tell them that that was a great big house standing behind me that was going to protect me if there was any trouble. I made friends. I began to like school again. And the following year, my little sister Mary was born, and everything was good. I've been back to visit Believy many times, as a teenager and as an adult. My aunt and uncle's descendants still live there. The house is now under the auspices of the National Trust, and it even has a second bathroom. But it is still that big, brooding edifice up there on that little hill. The old derelict linen mill is still decomposing down by the river, and the fairy ring is still up the hill, undisturbed. I carry the blessings of Believy with me always. The older I get, if the easier it becomes to close my eyes and imagine running up and down endless stairways, looking out old glass and making the landscape dance, and walking up and down stone steps, worn in the middle by 2.5 centuries of busy feet. It is indeed a magic house. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jane. Tonight we've already been hearing so many stories of love, with the love of singing and performing, the love of the brain, the love of a mother, the love of a house, and we still have another story. I mean, it's so cool to do this, like all the different kinds of love that are just filling this space, and I'm having the best time. And I know you are too. So this is wonderful. I talked to you a little bit earlier about the classes that Capital Storytelling is doing, and please check it out, capitalstorytelling.com, to find out all those stories. But there is a very special class that is coming up that I wanted to let you know. This is a new class that we've never done before, and it's going to be a mini workshop. So it is our storytelling class, but like in a day. So it is an opportunity for people who maybe can't commit to the 4-week class and want just kind of this intensive little time to practice put together a story. So it's good for people who are brand new to storytelling, or people who have done it before but need that opportunity to kind of really hone a story that they have in their head that they want to kind of put together. So it is a 1-day intensive, and you can find that on the website under classes. And this is going to be a limited spots. There are limited spots available. So this is something that, don't miss your opportunities, and it is coming up soon. So definitely check that out. The other thing that I want to let you know is we always set up a goal for ourselves. So I told you that we never turn anyone away. So if people are interested in taking a class, right, we have pay what you can scholarships. We really believe in what it is that we're doing in our mission, and we want to make that accessible to all. And so we never want money to be something that prevents people from doing that. So to help us get there, we always set a goal for these live events. This is one of the times where we really come to the community and we ask people to help support the mission. And so normally when we were doing this in IRL, in real life, not on Zoom, you'd buy your ticket to come see the show. And here we're just doing a donation based. But the shows still cost us something to run, and we're trying to make that. And so I want to let you know that we are $500 away from our goal, which is not that big a deal because there's about 100 people here right now listening. And so if each of you, just tipped a $5 because you're having such a great time, we would absolutely make our goal. So I want to encourage you right now, if you have not yet donated, or if you feel like you're having a really great time and you can give just another $5, if everyone did that, that would help us reach our goal. And if you're feeling extra generous, we'd be thrilled to surpass our goal. So anything that you can support us with, we are very, very happy. And so just so thankful that you're spending your time here with us. So we're so close. And thank you for all of you who have donated. Know that it is, I can't, I keep saying that thank you so much, but it really is. It is people like you who are so generous, and for Capital Public Radio, who has been an ongoing sponsor. Just thank you so much. So there's all the things. So capitalstorytelling.com/donate. Link is in the chat. And we're just going to keep going with our final storyteller this evening. So many great stories. Love this next storyteller. I've loved all the storytellers. And I'm almost sad, because this is the last storyteller this evening. And then it's done. And I've just been having such a good time. I almost don't want it to end. But all things do. And so excited to hear this last storyteller. Our last storyteller this evening is Aunti Vice. And so Aunti Vice is a kink writer and educator. Her blog and books have been recognized for their excellence, and she also performs as a storyteller and a stand-up comic. Very excited. Mix Aunti Vice is going to be sharing with us a story that's titled Kinky Queer Revolutionaries.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here tonight. I discovered my goal in life at the age of 4. I was watching The Muppet Show, and Liberace comes on in this full-length white fur coat, and his fingers are covered in bejeweled rings, and he plays the piano, and the Muppets dance, and I knew at that moment I was meant to be his sidekick. And I begged my parents for piano lessons, and for my winter coat that year, I got a faux white rabbit fur number that came down to the back of my knees with brass buttons. That was clue number 1. In first grade, after the second good Star Wars movie came out, all the kids would reenact it on the playground, and all the girls would want to be Princess Leia except me. And I insisted on being Han Solo and rescuing the princess from the Death Star. That was clue number 2. Then in second grade, my class was doing a performance, a little school play about the establishment of America. And before they gave out parts, my teacher called me into the hallway and crouched down and in very quiet tone told me that there weren't enough girl parts and I was going to have to play a boy. And I was going to have to play George Washington. And I knew from her tone and her behavior that this was supposed to be something I was supposed to be embarrassed about. But if you're doing a story about the founding of America, George Washington's a pretty central character, and I was really proud of this role. So for the next 2 weeks, I wore my little gray jodhpurs and my fake buckle-up shoes to school and rocked the George Washington role. So that was clue 3. And by the time I came out to my parents as bisexual at 14, there had been a lot of other clues, so if they were surprised at all, honest about who I was, it allowed other people to be honest about who they were. So while I was the only out gay kid on campus, I knew all the other gay kids, right? And there were a lot of them, and we would go out and we'd hang out and have coffee and be ourselves, and it was fantastic. Then I started to learn about gay history. And at the time, PBS was running The Life and Times of Harvey Milk. And I discovered Harvey Milk, who is a hilarious, larger-than-life character. And he had a rallying cry, which was, come out once and for all and stand up and fight. And I took that to heart because I knew I could be out and I could be open about who I was because there were so many people before me who'd taken a much greater risk to be who they were. And I owed it to them to stand up and be who I was. And I owed it to the next generation to fight for who we are because it was so far from having basic human rights for gay kids. And I also discovered the gay community and the adult gay community by volunteering with HIV/AIDS organizations. And I started volunteering about the age of 12. And I learned a lot through these organizations. First, I learned that the gay community is not a monolith by any means. Not only is it different in terms of race and ethnic and gender backgrounds, it's different in the way people approached gay rights. You had the professional homosexuals, right? And these were the doctors who were married to lawyers and they had adopted kids and they lived in the suburbs and they went and supported city council races and talked about the arts and went to theater, and they never talked about sex and they never talked about desire or discrimination or anything that would make people uncomfortable, right? And then there were the people that I identified with and I connected with, which were the unacceptable queers. We're talking the leather dykes and the butches and the fairies and the drag queens and the drag kings and, people you would call faggots and dykes. And these were my people. These were the people who loved who they were at the core and embraced who they are. The thing is, when you were unacceptable as a gay person, not only did the predominant society not really accept you, neither did the professional homosexuals, right? And the logic at the time in the gay movement was that we had to put our professional homosexuals forward because they were acceptable. And once they convinced the people in power to give them some basic human rights, then they could come along and bring in the rest of us, right? All the other people that we had to hide in the background. And to my immature 14, 15-year-old brain, this made sense. Like, get people comfortable, and then we can kind of bring everybody else along. But against this in the gay movement and in HIV and AIDS, there was Larry Kramer. And for those of you who don't know Larry is kind of this larger-than-life, acerbic, in-your-face New Yorker. And he's a gay man, and he was quintessential to the fight for HIV and AIDS and rights and drugs for gay people. And Larry did two very important things. He started the Gay Men's Health Crisis, which was and still is a major gay service and HIV service organization. And he started ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. And ACT UP is a direct action group that would do things like die-ins at the FDA. At one point, they broke into the FDA, and there would be video of Kramer yelling at Dr. Fauci for not prioritizing HIV and AIDS. And people were angry, and Larry was angry, because at this point, by the time I came out, more than 1 million people had died of a preventable disease. It took more than 100,000 Americans dying of AIDS before Reagan would even say the name of the disease killing them. And it was the first time I learned that when you're part of an unacceptable group, the government is okay with you dying from preventable reasons because they don't like you. Which is a lesson I think a lot of Americans learned in very stark terms in the last couple of years. But Larry scared me, right? When you're met with this wall of power and anger, it's frightening. And as a 15-year-old, I was frightened by Larry. And it made sense to go along with the professional homosexuals, right? So I did, and I got into gay advocacy. In fact, so much so that instead of going to my senior prom, I went to the big gay fundraiser in town, right? And that night, I'm getting all dolled up, and I'm putting on my dress, and I'm doing my makeup, and my mom comes into my room and says, my greatest fear tonight is that an older butch lesbian will whisk you away on her motorcycle and turn you into a sex slave. And I thought, wow, how does my mom know my greatest fantasy? I'm there for it. Still there for it if there's older butch leather lesbians in the audience. Right? Because these were my people. These were the people I loved to be around. But I took forward that into college that you had to tone down and be acceptable and not be angry. And as I was an LGBT advocate in college, and trying to be acceptable still didn't stop the college Republicans at UC Davis for putting me on a list for a fix-it rape. It didn't stop the death threats. And I took trying to be toned down and acceptable into my first job after undergraduate, which was the head of an HIV AIDS organization in Bakersfield. And I took it into graduate school, and I took it into my career in politics as a researcher, as the head of a state agency. And in 25 years of doing that, and in trying to make myself professionally acceptable to people in power and argue that I deserve basic human rights, like the right to go to the doctor and get help, like the right to adopt a child, like the right not to be fired just because I'm gay. It didn't matter how small I made myself, and it didn't matter how acceptable I tried to be. I was never going to be small enough and acceptable enough for people in power to feel magnanimous enough to give me basic rights. And that makes me furious, because I should not have to be acceptable to the people in power before basic human rights are granted. And after 25 years of trying to swallow that BS, my body shut down. I literally couldn't take it. And my entire body shut down. And within 6 months of my 40th birthday, I became fully disabled and had to quit this career that I spent my life working toward. And I wasn't ready to give it up. But I also wasn't ready to go back and keep trying to be acceptable. So I started to write. Because it's what I do. I'm an academic. I'm a researcher. And I started to write. But I started to write about the things that make gay people unacceptable and the stuff that makes me really happy and fun. I started to write about sex. I started to write about kink. I started to write erotica. And I'm really good at it. And it took off. And as I'm writing about it and as I'm teaching about it and I'm back in this community of the people that I love the most, I still felt a need to fall back on my old titles, my doctorate, my work with the state, my titles of, heads of different agencies. Because I still felt a need to make myself somewhat palatable to people in power. And then something interesting happened. About 3 years ago, the Gay Men's Health Crisis got a new executive director, and they created a Lifetime Achievement Award. And they gave it to Larry Kramer, which was significant, because while Kramer had been their founder and on their board, he had been so loud and so angry that the board had removed him from his position as director and removed him from all aspects of GMHC. And after about 20 years of him being exiled from what he refers to as his first child, they came back to say thank you for all the work he had done in AIDS. And as people are introducing Larry, they point out that he's often seen as very angry and very loud, things that have always been said about me. And he was angry and he was loud because he was watching the people he loved most in the world die unnecessarily because the government couldn't care less about their lives. And it really resonated with me, right? And it allowed me to start really embracing what I'm doing now and talking about desire and talking about sex. And then about a year ago, there was a commercial on TV. And it's the first commercial that's made me cry. Not even a Hallmark commercial. It's a commercial for an HIV prevention drug. And the people in the commercial are Black gay men and a trans woman and a drag queen. And all of those of us who are really unacceptable, we're there. And there's this drug that prevents this disease I've spent my whole life fighting against. And we're there not because the professional homosexuals were nice enough, but because those of us who are very queer and very angry fought very hard to get it there. And it affirms that I need to keep showing up for my first love and the people I love most in the world, my kinky queer revolutionaries. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Aunti Vice. So beautiful. I just thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you to all the storytellers. Y'all, we got to the end of the show. I told you that this would happen, and then I'm all like, but I don't want to be sad about what's done. I want to be excited about the time we had together. This is such an amazing, wonderful evening with you. Thank you for spending your Friday evening with us, wherever you are. Just really appreciate every one of you that came out. This was the event, A Different Kind of Love, and I'm feeling all the love and even just like the power and the willingness to speak and the courage of sharing stories, and just so much great things. Thank you to everyone who donated. So appreciative of you, everyone who supported, everyone who was here, who just listened. Thank you one more time to our Capital Public Radio for being our sponsor. And I want to say a super special thank you to all of our storytellers who are here. I don't know if you can see them. And there's everyone. I hope you can see us all. So thank you. Wave to all the people. Thank you so much, storytellers. Thank you for being here. We appreciate every single one of you. yeah, find us again. Come to a slam. The next event is going to be June 18th, or for the next live show. So please stick around. Welcome to the Cap Story fam. We'll see y'all next time.